Just briefly, before we jump straight into the demo, just thought I would set some initial context. What I'm about to show you is the user interface of Tradelens, which is one simple way to quickly access your trade information or consignments and container movements. We also provide the same capability of accessing all of this information directly through APIs and connecting that information back into your core systems as well. And then I would also add that if you have any questions during the demonstration time itself, if you're viewing this webinar live, feel free to enter questions in the chat. We will have experts available in reading your questions and respond to any inquiries that you have. And if you are viewing this as a recording later, feel free to send us information at tradelens.com. We'll provide more information on that at the end of the webinar, and we'd be happy to follow up if, again, you are reviewing this via recording. One of the key things we intend to show you through this demonstration are the unique capabilities of Tradelens to not only be able to help you understand the information associated with where your given container is at any moment in time, who has custody of it, and really see all those milestones events associated with the movement of a container within a consignment across the world. What we're also going to show you is the ability to securely, via blockchain-controlled capability, the ability to link all the associated trade documentation in conjunction with those visibility events, all managed together in one common place, available to securely share them among all the participants who are party to the trade, and have a way to collaborate together around understanding where your container is and being able to see all the associated documentation, again, managed with the security and immutability that comes with the benefits of using blockchain, all being able to be managed together in one common place. And with that, let me jump over to the system, and I will just quickly log into the Tradelens environment. I will bring up a consignment that we can use for this demo. When I log in, I am given access to all of the consignments that I have permission to, and I can either look for them by booking number, bill of lading number, and those types of events. In this case, I'll quickly look for a reference number associated with the consignment that we'll use for the demo today. And I've brought up a specific consignment, and you can see for this consignment, there is one container that we are moving from an inland location in Zhengzhou, China, to ultimately an inland location in Dublin, Georgia. And that's going to flow primarily through the ports of Shanghai at its origin and Savannah, Georgia at its destination. To give just additional context about what's contained within this shipment that we're about to see, this is a movement of a single 40-foot container of 4K LED televisions, and you're going to see multiple dimensions contained within this particular shipment. The ability to manage carrier haulage capability, merchant haulage-based capability, and connecting all of the ecosystem participants associated with this shipment throughout its journey. By bringing up this single consignment of this example of 4K televisions, you can see right at the summary level some key pieces of information relative to this shipment. First, you can see its origin country and its destination planned country, the two ports being associated with this shipment. You can see information like the carrier booking number, bill of lading reference, the consignment reference, the harmonized system code, as well as key export cutoff information when various elements need to be made available, both the export documentation, due date,
when the cargo needs to be delivered for export, and when the VGM needs to be submitted as well. In addition to that, you can also see at a summary level the exact location of this particular container. You can see its origin location inland started out in Jingzhou, China, and ultimately was finally delivered in an inland location in Dublin, Georgia. You'll also be able to quickly look at event information associated with key documents. You'll be able to look at the individual documents associated with this shipment as well, and the details around each and every individual container that may be in a consignment. In this particular consignment for this demonstration, we have one single container. When I click on that individual container, I want to be able to highlight a few elements relative to the transport. What I want to do is I'm going to shift to look at the transport plan. And that transport plan really shows you all stages of this journey. And I'm going to scroll to the bottom of this particular shipment to look at its origin, to show you the flow of this container from the beginning until the end. You can see once again that this container started out at an inland location in Jingzhou, China. And it started actually at a place of the transport plan being loaded of when stuffing was anticipated to occur all the way throughout its journey. So I want to highlight a few things about the type of information and the breadth of information that is captured in Tradelens. We'll see three types of updates as we look through the information. We'll see events that are planned, events that are where planned events change and those estimates change, and we'll also see actual events of when a particular task is actually completed. So again, at any moment in time, you can see an event that is planned, its change or any change in estimate, and then actuals. And so just like we originally see a planned stuffing start time, we can actually see when actual stuffing occurred. We can also see the source provider of the information associated with every event as well. And some of those events, that information is provided by the BCO or the initial shipper. And in some events, it is actually provided by the transport service provider. So by way of example, as we see that this particular container completed its stuffing activity on March 30th, we can also see when that container is then loaded on rail, when it was planned and when it actually occurred, when we can see the actual departure, and then moving to the next stage in its journey, we see when that container arrives in the port of Shanghai. And you can see that again, in each event type, we are capturing information from the source of the participant in the ecosystem that is actually acting and creating that event. In this case, all of these events being provided by the rail operator, moving that container from its inland location to the ocean port. As it arrives into the port location, you can see that not only is the rail operator providing information about arrival into the port, but the terminal operator in Shanghai is providing the same information as well. So you are getting collaborating evidence of the flow of this container and its disposition at every point along the way, including if more than one actor within the ecosystem is operating on that container. As we continue throughout its journey, we are able to see a container that has not only arrived, but the actual subsequent steps as well. Being loaded on a vessel, that vessel departure, again, corroborated by not only the terminal operator, but has corroborating facts from the ocean carrier about vessel departure with that container also. And we're also tracking that container as it moves across the journey, including in this particular case, through a transshipment location, which is in Busan, South Korea. Once again, tracking the same type of information. Planned vessel arrival time of its original transport plan, updates and changes to estimates that may occur throughout the journey and the transport to the next transshipment port, and then ultimately through that vessel arrival, container being discharged from vessel. And I wanted to show you an example of, for every single high-level event, like this one of an actual discharge from vessel, underpinning that is a set of detailed information associated with not only the status of the container at any moment, you continue to be able to have reference to all equipment number information and very specific timestamps for every detailed element. Again, all of this accessible via API as well as through the user interface that I'm showing you. As we continue along this journey, we're also going to move from the transshipment port of Busan, South Korea, until ultimately this container arrives at the port of Savannah, Georgia in the United States. Once again, we're not only being able to see information about vessel arrival and container discharge from vessel from the perspective of the terminal operator, but we're also able to see relevant information about the next transport stages of this container, including actual load on truck by the drayage operator, when that full container gates out full for the next portion of its journey, again, reported by not only the ocean carrier, but also the drayage operator as well. All of these detailed events are being supported from the source providers that are acting upon and moving this container across its journey, until we arrive at the final stage where that container is gated in full, ultimately discharged from the truck, emptied, and then gated out empty once again, and then gated back in for return to service and used on another shipment for another consignment. So at a high level, that is the level of detail that we're able to show from a transport plan perspective. But I also wanted to show that there is much more information that goes below and is available in addition to the actual transport. So not only are we able to see all of those physical transport events that we just went through, but you're able to see information events as well, when documents were made available, when documents were submitted that supported that transport, even including things like a transport piece of equipment being selected for inspection and when that inspection ultimately was passed. Once again, being updated and provided by the relevant party responsible for sharing that information for each individual container and each individual consignment. Now let's focus on documents for a moment. If I move back out and I want to look at the trade documents that are being provided associated with this consignment, this is where one of the most powerful parts of Tradelens comes to bear, and that is the ability to have all of these documents that are required to support this trade being not only linked and tied to this individual consignment, but being able to be secure, trusted, and permissioned, leveraging the power of blockchain. Here we're seeing a list of the relevant documents that are already loaded associated with this shipment. The Seaway bill, packing list, the bill of lading, certificate of origin, a pro forma invoice, and an import declaration. I wanted to highlight a few things about how documents are managed and stored within the Tradelens environment. One, the actual documents themselves are stored off-chain, but the hash of every single document that is utilized within Tradelens is stored on the blockchain itself, across the blockchain network, and is used to validate every single time a document is accessed or viewed that it is consistent with the hash of the original source-based document that was provided from the authoritative source in the first place. So you can have certainty that the document you are viewing and accessing as a permission party to this consignment is the true trusted source of information. It has been unaltered as it was originally provided, again, by the authoritative source for each document and by the role provider for that document. You will also notice that we have the ability to store both structured and unstructured document. So in this case, this can be a PDF style document, or any image style document is able to be stored with Tradelens and secured by blockchain, as well as the ability to view structured content as well. And I'll give you a further example of this in just a moment. In this particular case, an actual structured document is being able to be loaded into Tradelens, and this provides the ability for permission parties to a structured document to be able to build automation around access to this document. So once again, subscribing to this information via API allows the user and the recipient of this information to be able to leverage the actual detailed underlying data and the data fields themselves into internal systems, cutting down on the necessity to rekey or do anything manually associated with this document by leveraging the structured content that we provide. Greater levels of automation can be accomplished. In addition to the documents that are already loaded for this transport, since this one has already completed its journey, I wanted to also provide an example if we were to add an additional document or were requested by one of the permission parties to add an additional document to this particular consignment. It is as simple as I just performed adding a new document, and I'll show an example of adding an actual commercial invoice in addition to the pro forma invoice. I select a commercial invoice type. I will go find the structured content that I wish to load, and I will simply upload it, and it is now taking the structured content associated with the commercial invoice and is loading that into the templates that are provided within Tradelens for a commercial invoice. Again, once again, being secured where the hash of this document that I have just loaded is now being placed onto the blockchain network within Tradelens and is immediately available to any permission party to this consignment that needs that information. This is a very rapid way to securely share document and content information with any of the permission parties that need access to that information, and it can be done in near real time. In addition, as often may occur in executing global trade, there are times when changes are required or modifications are required. We enable that instant ability as well. In this particular case, I will do an example of editing that commercial invoice to, perhaps in this case, we will do a quick update to an address. That this address of the buyer needed to have a different number change for the street address. a very simple change, but one that I want to just use by way of example. If I make that change to this structured information associated with this commercial invoice, and I submit it, leveraging the power of blockchain, we do not eliminate or change the original commercial invoice that was previously loaded, but we will always create a new version. A new hash of that document will be taken and stored on the blockchain, and so that you're able to see a full lineage record of any modifications that occurred. Not only when did it occur, but who made that change, and you maintain the integrity of seeing all previous versions of a content that is supplied as well. So in this case, I now automatically see a new version 2. And we'll go down and see that that contains the new address. But once again, the original is still there and is available to be viewed. So if I were to go back and look at that original version 1, it still has the original address. So once again, blockchain is ensuring that I am always looking at the most current authoritative source of information. If anything is ever modified or changed, you have a lineage and a record of any of those modifications to any trade document. Again, increasing not only instant access to the information required to execute the trade, but is also increasing the amount of trust and certainty around the documentation that is being viewed as well. And then lastly, if I look at information events again, anytime a document is updated or a new piece of trade document source is added to a consignment, the timestamp associated with that information is automatically added into the event stream for that content as well. So at any moment in time, once again, I can look at the container information, look at all the detailed events associated with that container, the relevant documentation to support that container and that consignment, and anytime either new information is added, timestamps are being added, events are being created, and you are able to see a very detailed view of that container as it not only moved across the journey, but all the relevant documentation